Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for coming today. My name is Lisa Freeman. I'm the Executive Director of the Louisiana Highway Safety Commission. First, before we begin, I'd like to thank Wildlife and Fisheries Secretary Tyler Bosworth and Colonel Stephen Clark for hosting us here at this beautiful facility. Thank you so much. Today, we are here to announce the kickoff of Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over, our Labor Day law enforcement campaign to combat impaired driving throughout Louisiana. If you look behind me, you can guess what Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over is all about. It's about our amazing, amazing law enforcement partners, those who protect and serve, who hold the line for our safety in places from Port Sulphur to Oil City and all points in between, who will be patrolling countless roads this Labor Day holiday looking for impaired drivers. And you don't have to guess what happens when officers spot an impaired driver. Impaired drivers don't pass go, they don't collect $200. What they do get is a wake-up call and a free ride to jail. It's just that simple. I would like to acknowledge some folks who have come to join us today, our Louisiana Highway Safety Commission staff, our law enforcement liaisons on behalf of the Highway Safety Commission throughout the entire state. We also have some board of commissioners with us today, and those are Chief Chad Leger from the Scott Police Department and Commissioner Lloyd Patu. Also with us is our chairman of the Louisiana Highway Safety Commission Board of Commissioners, Mr. J.O. Quinn. I would ask him to come forward now to deliver a message from our governor.
Thank you, Lisa. And Drive Sober, Get Pulled Over is a real thing to me. A retired trooper, I've seen firsthand and all too often how impaired drivers affect lives and generationally due to the impact of the tragedies that come from that. So I have the governor's proclamation here. Whereas thousands of people will travel in and through Louisiana during the Labor Day holiday, and whereas impaired driving is a serious public safety issue in Louisiana that impacts innocent travelers on our streets and highways every year, and whereas during Louisiana's Labor Day holidays from 2020 to 2024, 271 people were injured and 18 were killed in crashes involving an alcohol-impaired driver. And whereas of the 753 drivers, passengers, and pedestrians killed in crashes in Louisiana in 2024, 259 were killed in crashes involving drivers drinking alcohol. And whereas it is illegal in Louisiana for a person to drive if he or she is impaired by alcohol or other substances, or has a blood alcohol level of 0.08 or higher. And whereas studies show that vigorous, well-publicized law enforcement campaigns to identify, arrest, and prosecute suspected impaired drivers effectively minimize instances of impaired driving. And whereas the Louisiana Highway Safety Commission has made funds available to Louisiana law enforcement agencies to identify and arrest drivers suspected of impaired driving during the Labor Day holiday. Now, therefore, I, Jeff Landry, Governor of the state of Louisiana, do hereby proclaim August 19th through September 7th, 2026, as Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over enforcement period in the state of Louisiana. Signed, Governor Jeff Landry.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Quinn, and thank you also, Commissioner Gary Taylor, for joining us today. 24 days ago, Colonel Frank Besson was appointed as the 28th Superintendent of the Louisiana State Police. His very first law enforcement assignment was in his hometown as an officer in the Grand Isle Police Department, before he went to work as a deputy in the Lafourche Parish Sheriff's Department. He joined state police in 1999 and spent the next several decades working in or supervising all areas of LSP, including patrol, support services, crisis response, operational development, transportation safety services, commercial vehicle enforcement, mobile weight enforcement. He worked in hazmat, he worked at the Emergency Operations Center, SWAT, Mobile Field Force Team, and air support, as well as serving as the commander of Troop C. in the Houma area prior to being named LSP Chief of Staff and Assistant Superintendent. He also holds degrees in criminal justice from Nicholls State and LSU in Alexandria, and he is a graduate of the FBI National Academy. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to the head of State Police, Colonel Frank Bazoff.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here today to highlight the incredible partnership between Louisiana State Police, the Louisiana Highway Safety Commission, and our law enforcement partners here for this so important safety campaign of Drive Sober and Get Pulled Over. I'll tell you that it's unfortunate that every year we have so many lives that are claimed on Louisiana highways because of impaired drivers. Just last year in 2025, 34% of the fatality crashes that occurred in Louisiana were involved alcohol or drugs or both, and that's way too many. When you look at that 34%, that is extremely unacceptable because every impaired driving crash is preventable if you make the right decisions. And I'll tell you that Louisiana State Police will continue to work with our law enforcement partners and identify and remove impaired drivers off our roadways. And that's going to be done through sobriety checkpoints and proactive patrol. I'll tell you that every safety campaign through highway safety is so important, but this one kind of touches me, I guess personally. When I was a young trooper, I worked a fatality crash where a 6-year-old boy was killed because the driver made a poor decision that night and decided to drink and drive. And I'll tell you that I will never forget when I was on the scene and looking down at that 6-year-old boy. I will never forget his face and looking at his lifeless body. And again, it's something that's carried with me since that day, and I know I'll never forget that for the rest of my life. I truly believe personally that God put each of us on this earth for a purpose. And that kid's purpose was not to die that night in a fatality crash because of the poor decision that an impaired driver made. His purpose in life was probably to be a doctor or be a business person or maybe even a Louisiana State Trooper, but he would drive that night. And that's why it's so important that we all work together and do our part. And we will do our part as a law enforcement agency and our law enforcement partners to remove every impaired driver off that roadway. But it's also important that the public makes that decision as well and is responsible by making good decisions. If you plan to go out and consume alcohol or take any kind of substance that's going to impair your ability to drive a vehicle, make that responsible decision and find a designated driver or use a ride share or whatever you have to do to stay from getting behind that wheel and putting your life and somebody else's life in danger. Again, I appreciate everyone's participation in this, again, incredible campaign as it's so important. And we're looking forward to getting on the roads. I'll tell you that I know that you'll see an increase in state police presence on the roadways, especially this upcoming holiday for Labor Day. But we're looking forward to working together with our law enforcement partners to make our highways that much more safe. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker also is an accomplished law enforcement professional. Colonel Stephen Clark heads up the enforcement unit of the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, and that includes successfully partnering with state police and with local agencies to conduct Operation Dry Water, a national campaign focused on preventing driving or operating a vessel on the water while impaired. In addition to his 22-year career with Wildlife and Fisheries, Colonel Clark also served in multiple positions for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, including as Special Agent in Charge. We thank him for his service to our country as he is a veteran of Operation Desert Storm and is the recipient of the Army Service Ribbon, the National Defense Service Medal, and the Louisiana War Cross. Please welcome Colonel Stephen Clark.
Good morning. On behalf of the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, we're proud to stand with the Louisiana Highway Safety Commission Louisiana State Police, and all of our other local, state, and federal law enforcement partners for today's Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over campaign kickoff. This campaign brings law enforcement agencies across Louisiana together with one clear message: reduce crashes, injuries, and deaths caused by impaired driving through high visibility enforcement and public awareness. During Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over, our Louisiana game wardens will join our law enforcement partners in maintaining a visible presence statewide. While our primary responsibility will be on the waterways, we are part of the same coordinated effort to prevent impaired operation and save lives. Through that coordinated effort, we can carry a consistent safety message from Louisiana's roadways to its waterways. Impairment affects judgment, coordination, reaction time, and decision making. Impairment on the water presents added risks. Sun, heat, wind, noise, waves, and vessel movement can increase fatigue and reduce an operator's ability to respond. Alcohol and other impairing substances reduce those abilities even further. From 2021 through 2025, our Louisiana game wardens investigated boating incidents that resulted in 87 fatalities across Louisiana, with alcohol identified as a factor in more than 25% of those fatality boat accidents. These numbers make one thing clear: never operate a vessel while impaired. An impaired vessel operator places everyone at risk, including passengers, people in the water, and others using the waterways. The same is true on our roadways, where one impaired driver endangers many lives. This campaign is about more than enforcement. It encourages people to make responsible choices before a poor decision leads to an arrest, a crash, a serious injury, or worse, death. If alcohol will be part of your day on the water, plan ahead and designate a sober vessel operator. Importantly, never allow anyone who is impaired to operate that vessel. That responsibility must continue when you leave the water. A safe day of boating does not end at the boat launch. Make sure you also have a sober driver for the trip home. Whether you're behind the wheel of a vehicle or at the controls of a vessel, the message is the same: drive sober or get pulled over. Together with all of these law enforcement partners, we can help ensure everyone has a safe holiday and gets home safely. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Colonel. Our next speaker is Sheriff Craig Weber. When LaFouche Parish Sheriff Craig Weber took his oath of office for the first time, he became one of the youngest sheriffs to ever hold elected office in Louisiana. 34 years and 9 elections later, he still holds the job that he loves in the place where he was reared. Craig Weber started his career as an officer for the Thibodeau Police Department and then for the Sheriff's Office before moving on to State Police for 9 years. And he did all of this while going to college at Nichols and then Loyola. In fact, Craig Weber became sheriff just 2 months after graduating Loyola's law school. Quite an accomplishment. Sheriff Weber has been a genuine and a steady advocate for crime victims and for senior citizens, and is a strong champion for drug awareness safety programs in LaFouche Parish. Please help me welcome Sheriff Craig Weber.
The citizens of Louisiana and the motoring public are very fortunate to have Lisa Freeman as the executive director of this wonderful Louisiana Highway Safety Commission, which brings a laser-like focus on highway safety and the reduction of impaired driver crashes. Similar to Colonel Basom, my memory goes back 43 years as a freshly minted trooper investigating his first ever fatal crash. A typical drunk driver crash where the drunk driver crosses the center line and takes the life of an innocent victim. And in the early 80s, there were a lot of things that had to be done manually, and those scenes could take quite a long time to clear out. And one of the duties that was inevitable was going to be to make notification to the family. But during the course of the investigation, an older gentleman drove up and introduced himself. He was the father-in-law of the victim. And he shared with me that his son-in-law and daughter had recently had their first twin babies, their children. And those babies were a couple of weeks old, and the father was coming home from working nights to provide for his family. And he just loved his kids, and he talked about how it would brighten his life every time he would see those little girls. And when I have opportunities to speak, I think about what are those ladies like today? How was their life changed? Did their mother lose a provider and really have to struggle? Did she remarry and were they adopted? Do they now have children of their own? There's so many unanswered questions, but my whole life, and I will always remember that and have that wonder and to think how this crime, this violent crime is so preventable. And local law enforcement and state law enforcement working with the Louisiana Highway Safety Commission in campaigns like Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over can change that and should change that. We tend to measure our successes in law enforcement and in government by either the increase or the decrease of failures. If we had more crashes this year than last year, well, we need to do something about that and vice versa. I just want to give you a couple of quick statistics from LaFouche Parish to illustrate the value and importance of this kind of partnership. So last year in 2025, there were 13 fatal crashes. Of those 13, 9 involved people who were impaired with drugs or alcohol. This year, thus far, and we're 2/3 into the year, we've had 4 fatal crashes. Of those 4 fatal crashes, 2 involve alcohol or drugs. The LaFouche Parish Sheriff's Office has made 70 driving impaired arrests thus far. Add to that state police and local municipalities, it's probably about in excess of 100. Those arrests, 22 of those arrests out of the 70 were because of Louisiana highway safety campaigns. Because of Drive Sober and Get Pulled Over for saturation controls and checkpoints. That's nearly 23%. That's 22 people who are in custody and prevented from creating the kind of tragic result that Colonel and I both spoke about. Local law enforcement have a lot of duties and responsibilities beyond highway safety. Although it's one of the biggest priorities, and I make no apologies for making it a priority, there's certainly other things that we're doing too. We're investigating property crimes and burglaries and thefts. We're investigating domestic violence. We're arresting people for drugs. We're assisting motorists. We're directing traffic. We're escorting. We may be even handling violent crime. So these campaigns and the investment that the Highway Safety Commission makes in local and state law enforcement allows those police officers to put a laser light focus without any other calls for service or competition. And that's the real value of saving lives and assisting and working in conjunction. I'm going to close really with 2 anecdotes, things that statistics don't measure, that are personal but illustrate the true value and the impact of what these police officers are doing and what the Highway Safety Commission is supporting. 2 friends of mine, one about 5 years ago, got arrested for DWI, first offense, called me the next day in a panic, apologizing and saying, "You will never see me drive and drink again. Tell me what I have to do. I want to go through this process. I will do everything to the T, and you will never see me behind the wheel of a car." the last time I spoke to him was about a year ago when he was recovering from bypass surgery. And whenever we encounter each other, the first thing he says, I have never put a beer in my hand and get behind the wheel of a car. That event changed his future and increased the safety of our state. Last week, I was joining friends at what you might consider an informal supper club, where guys get together, most of them retired, everybody pitches in a few dollars and they'll cook up some good little meal. One of my lifelong friends was sitting across the table and he said, you want a non-alcoholic beer? I looked at him kind of funny, he'd never asked me that before. I said, yeah, sure. I said, why? Well, my wife and I were coming back from the casino and she had been drinking, I had one beer. And the headlights on my car were faded, so I kept bright lights on to be able to see, and I got pulled over by a trooper. And he asked me if I'd been drinking, and I said, yeah, I had one beer. And he gave me a field sobriety test. And he said, yep, you're right, you probably only had one beer, you did well. He says, non-alcoholic beer. I'm 73 years old, I've never had a crash, I don't think I've ever driven when I shouldn't have, but that one experience. So you don't always result in an arrest. It doesn't have to be an arrest. It could be just that interaction that impresses upon someone the importance of driving safety. So thank you so much for this opportunity to speak and to continue the good work that we have been doing for many years to reduce those crashes so we don't have those stories to tell anymore. God bless you.
Thank you, Sheriff, for sharing those amazingly powerful words and stories. On January 16th of 2024, T.J. Morse was sworn in as Chief of the Baton Rouge Police Department. His 22-year career with the department includes stints as Commander of Training Services and Head of 3 Training Academy classes. Chief Morse's modernizing of BRPD's training policies has allowed the department to successfully end a 39-year federal consent decree. He's also been instrumental in promoting the medical preparedness of the police department, providing officers with equipment and supplies that have resulted in more than 100 lives saved every year. Please welcome Chief T.J. Morse.
Good morning, thank you, Ms. Freeman. Thank you for Louisiana Highway Safety Commission. At a time where all of us are short in manpower and money, the resources y'all provide are invaluable. So today we are joined here together on the same mission, to make our roadways and communities safer through this year's Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over campaign. Let me be clear on why this is so important to our Baton Rouge Police Department. It has nothing to do with writing more tickets. It's all about working hard to prevent crashes, to save lives, and to make sure people from this city and visiting this city get home safely. Impaired driving is a choice. Its consequences can be life-altering, but it is absolutely preventable. We all can share stories of how impaired driving has had personal effects for our families or friends. In 2021, our current commander of Uniform Patrol, Jason Martin, lost his leg in a horrific crash where he was struck by an impaired driver. Again, impaired driving isn't an accident just waiting to happen. Impaired driving is a choice. We've seen initiatives like this work to combat those bad choices. Our Baton Rouge Police DWI Task Force, Traffic Division, and all our Uniform Patrol officers are ready to get to work during this year's campaign in order to better prevent the preventable. And our Baton Rouge police officers are specialists at this. Just last year, they got hundreds of impaired drivers off the road here in Baton Rouge. And 6 of our officers were recognized by MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, for their efforts in saving lives and creating safer roads in our city. One of our officers, Corporal Stephen Reed, had the third most DWI arrests in the entire state. We understand that celebrations and holidays, festivals, and football are all a part of our culture and what makes this place home. We also understand that often these occasions do involve the consumption of alcohol. However, we know that there is absolutely no reason, no excuse for getting behind the wheel impaired. Ride shares, designated drivers, looking out for our friends and family are all ideal options. We encourage our community to take advantage of those options, and you know, if you drink, you should not drive. If you see a friend that's impaired and about to drive, you should not let them. Our officers will be doing their part, and we ask that our community does theirs. Together, we can make our roads safer and hold impaired drivers accountable. Our Baton Rouge Police Department is excited about saving lives and getting drivers home safely with this partnership. Remember to keep the phrase in mind, drive sober or get pulled over, and as always, we are one community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief. And I want to also just give another shout out to Colonel Bason and Sheriff Weber, who despite having another engagement this morning, came here today to spend time with us to launch this important campaign. So my thanks to them and their team who are still here. Our next speaker is Captain Anthony Michaud. The New Orleans Police Department has been making news, very good news. In a recent article in the Times-Picayune, NOPD Commander of Special Events and Traffic Safety Division's Captain Anthony Michaud discussed how vigilant traffic patrols, especially impaired driving patrols, are helping to drive down crime. One such enforcement patrol, quote, led to the arrest of 4 people wanted on outstanding warrants, including one accused in a rape case, end quote. We are fortunate to have Captain Michaud with us today. He has been with the New Orleans Police Department since 1991. Traffic and special event operations have been a major focus for Captain Michaud throughout his career. And to his credit, his division has achieved a 98% solvability rate in fatal crashes and a 99% conviction rate. Please help me welcome New Orleans Police Department Commander and Captain Anthony Michaud.
Good morning, and thank you for having us. On behalf of the superintendent, we thank you for having us to make sure this messaging goes out. We know that the slogans are real. It's embedded in my mind as if it was the ABCs, right, from kindergarten. You know, drive sober, get pulled over, buzz driving, and drunk driving, could get a ticket. So it's important that the messaging continues to go on. Without the Louisiana Highway Safety Commission and the NHTSA group, we wouldn't have the funding to go ahead and do these enforcement operations without just the knowledge and help in promoting this. So besides the messaging, we want to make sure that we give out what we've been doing with our money and what obligations we have towards our department to make sure that the community feels a lot safer. The NOPD is very thankful for the opportunity with the Louisiana Highway Safety Commission, including the drive sober, get pulled over. It allows us to increase enforcements, but awareness regarding that driving. So just a few points of emphasis from the superintendent. She gave us a mission. She goes, I want to reduce fatalities. I want that down. And I know that it comes with driving intoxicated or impaired. But impairment comes in many forms. You have the alcohol, you have the prescription narcotics, and then you have the drugs. And just recently, we had a motor officer from Jefferson Parish that was struck down and killed, and I'm sure everybody's fully aware of what happened in that, where the lady had impairment through intoxication and the common prescriptions that she was taking at the time she was operating a motor vehicle. So between 2020 and 2024, we were second most in fatality-related crashes in the state of Louisiana. We're not very proud of that, so we said we were going to start making headway on that. Through a lot of enforcement and events, we know that we bring a lot of opportunities for drunk driving. Choices have consequences, and now we're stepping up to the plate to make sure that those choices are being dealt with in a manner of enforcement. So just to give you some comparables from 2025, total citations issued throughout occupant protection, speeding, and alcohol. In 2025, we did 1,491. In comparable to this year already, we did 2,745. That's an 84% increase in our enforcement action. And another one, impaired driving checkpoints. Of course, we've reduced the checkpoints and changed to saturation patrols. But with that saturation patrols, we've done by 900%, we've increased our saturation patrols. We've had 26 DWI grant-driven arrests in 2025 compared to now 42. That's a 51% increase in a year, and we're not even finished the year. Grant-driven total vehicle stops, which is impressive in itself, and thankful for Lisa and her team awarding us the opportunity to be able to go out there. And alone would not be able to do this without our support and without the team support. We did 1,539 vehicle stops in 2025 and compared to 2,400 just this year, and we're not finished. That's a 56% increase. Grant-driven miscellaneous state arrest, we had 7 in 2025. We're up to 22 in 26. That's a 214% increase. And as you know, our DWIs are up there. Now, as a result of that enforcement and given the opportunity to go out there and do these directed patrols and saturation patrols, we're down 34% in fatalities. All right, that's a big deal for us. That was driven high largely in 2020 to 2025. We're seeing a 34% decrease, and we're going to continue that. So our focus is laser when it comes to making sure that we're out there during the holidays and special events, which happens every weekend in New Orleans, as everybody knows. But that's not going to stop and deter the fact that we're going to have more boots on the ground, thanks to the superintendent giving a renewed effort towards putting out traffic. She understands the community's desire to make sure they have safe streets for their neighborhoods. She's listening to the emails and concerns about our constituents in our area. So Superintendent Kirkpatrick made emphasis to make sure she directed me to make an emphasis on getting drones off the street and reduce the fatalities. But without the help of the Louisiana Highway and Safety Commission, we probably wouldn't be here today. So I'm a big proponent of this particular messaging and as well enforcement, and I thank you on behalf of the superintendent for allowing us to be part of that messaging.
Thank you so much, Captain, for sharing those very impressive numbers. Before I continue, I'd like to acknowledge we have our Vice Chairman, Ron Bouchot, in the audience. He is our Vice Chairman, along with our Chairman, Jay O'Quinn, of the Louisiana Highway Safety Commission Board of Commissioners. And I also want to acknowledge all of the fine people behind me who serve each and every day. Let's give them a round of applause. As we close out, I also have some good news to share, but I'll get to that in a moment. First, I'd like to, again, thank our law enforcement partners. It takes, as you have heard, a concerted effort to pull off a statewide enforcement campaign. It takes Colonel Bason and his troopers at State Police patrolling I-49 from Lafayette through Alexandria and to Shreveport, and from I-20 east through Monroe and Tallulah. It takes Colonel Clark and his agents patrolling the Amite River, Lake Bruin, Lake Claiborne, and Lake Pontchartrain. Sheriff Weber is making sure no one is driving impaired down the bayou. And the streets of Baton Rouge are in good hands this Labor Day with Chief Morse. And even though New Orleans is known as Party Central, motorists won't be considering impaired driving as an option, while Captain Nishu's officers are on the job. The Big Easy happens to lose some of its charm when you're handcuffed in the back of an NOPD unit. These top law enforcement officials are here today to send a strong message. Impaired driving won't be tolerated. Not during the Labor Day holiday, not during any holiday, not during any day. So, here's the good news. This comes from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration in Washington, D.C., and I will quote, "Louisiana is winning the battle against impaired driving, end quote. Here's a little bit of the backstory to that. In 2015, Louisiana was above the national average in the percentage of traffic fatalities that involved an impaired driver. In that year, 234 people were killed in crashes with a drunk driver in Louisiana. By 2024, the number of people killed in drunk driving crashes across the nation shot up to almost 12,000. But in Louisiana in 2024, our impaired driving numbers dropped. We are now below the national average by nearly 20%. We certainly have more work to do, because even one fatality is one too many. But it does bear repeating that Louisiana has done the hard work to place us below the national average when it comes to drunk driving percentages and fatal crashes. We are moving in the right direction, and Louisiana is seeing the promise of our ultimate goal, which is 0 fatalities. You might ask, why are we optimistic about fewer tragedies ahead on Louisiana roads? So for starters, just look behind me. These officials have been at this for a long time, leading the charge against impaired driving. And very importantly, we have a governor who has made public safety a priority. There's also another reason that we're prevailing. It's because the people of Louisiana understand something today. They do not see impaired driving as normal behavior. They understand that impaired driving is not just a bad habit. It's not just bad behavior. They understand that drunk driving is not a part of Louisiana's rich culture. They understand that impaired driving is a crime. As you've heard, it's a violent crime with innocent victims. And as you can see, we have the folks who are day in and day out showing up to be crime fighters. Folks here in this room and throughout our great state. I want to thank them for the extraordinary partnerships that are moving the needle and that are saving lives. Thank you all.
See you.